Well, yesterday I was caught pilfering strawberries off the fruit plate in the back. So I better qualify my little speech. It was written before I got here, because after I say some of the things, you're going to say he plagiarized some of these greater minds from yesterday, especially John Embry. Anyhow, fellow adventurers, this morning I'm not going to fill your heads with a plethora of facts and figures. I'm briefly going to just ramble on about what I believe are 3 common sense reasons why junior companies should be supporting GATA. First, and the most important reason in my opinion, is that the facts bear this out, is that we need higher gold and silver prices to justify our exploration business plans. One of the prominent fund managers in our sector, John Hathaway of Tocqueville Funds, wrote out very eloquently back in 2001 that to facilitate and justify the exploration and mining of gold, our industry needed a sustained gold price of approximately $450 an ounce. But remember, that was back in 2001, when gold was roughly $3.20 an ounce. But importantly, oil was under $25 a barrel, copper was 65 cents a pound, and the CRB basket of commodities was $1.90. Now look around you. Oil is barking at 64. Copper has hit 170. The CRB is approaching 320. So I believe it's fair to speculate that the industry's overall encompassing costs to discover, prove up, engineer, environmentally prepare, construct recovery systems, etc., to produce an ounce of gold is well north of $600. And John said it last night, and I just went, whoa, but that's kind of where we come from. Yet all the miners want to chat about, it seems, is their respective cash costs to mine an ounce. What a pile of baloney. Yes, they may be able to amortize and expense everything to hell and back, so that balance sheet-wise they're accurate. But reality is a very different animal, and I don't believe the miners can replace 80 million ounces of new reserves every single year without admitting that they're in dire need of a higher gold price and return on their final product. Would you invest in the automotive industry if they reported their cash cost to manufacture a car and left out the cost of steel, plastic, and rubber? Would you applaud them for selling a car without recovering all the raw material costs? Would you even consider investing in or supporting companies like General Motors, Ford, or Toyota if they even had the remote possibility of being unable to produce more cars in 10 years? Of course not. Anyhow, I think you see my point. Without a higher gold price, we as an industry are probably unviable. Sorry, shareholders. There's a lot of shareholders here. It's the truth. Therefore, we must fight for free and fair precious metal prices or risk becoming seriously irrelevant, which, by the way, I believe is every central banker's dream. Point 2, and it's a little bit more subjective, but we juniors need to support GATA, in part because few, if none of the majors are. Why are they not here at Gold Rush 21? Many of my bosses, that's the shareholders, are pleased that we do what we can to support GATA. While with the majors, I postulate that maybe their management is respecting the interests of their largest stakeholders, their shareholdings or debt holdings or derivative holdings. Bill and Chris have spearheaded many email campaigns to demonstrate to management the concerns that multitude of individual investors have about the metal prices, but to no avail. So I must conclude that these same managers must be receiving other directives from other sources. I wonder if the big inside bankers have not taken a few pointers from some of the agricultural and pharmaceutical conglomerates who have successfully vertically integrated much of their respective sectors, and realize that the sorcery of fiat functions considerably more efficient when you manage all aspects of your hard money competitor by making his gold business a billboard loss leader to the benefit of your worldwide promulgation of fiat. I grew up on a family farm, and it taught me a lot about life. We produced both commercial poultry and fresh fruit for the local and export markets. Within our poultry sector, we had a marketing board. Within our raspberry sector, we had a producers co-op. Both organizations helped us recover a free and fair price for our products. Whether we supported either of these organizations was not even worthy of debate. Here we are. It was just common sense. Yes, there were the odd personality conflicts and disagreements on methods of approaches or from time to time other difficulties, but that's just life. We, as individual agricultural entrepreneurs, needed the horsepower of a cohesive advocacy group to prosper. Why is it so hard to convince my colleagues within our sector of this? Maybe we're just too competitive to work together, or maybe regulations keep us so busy we have little time to think and conspire. Lastly, I believe the juniors should support GATA because it's the right thing to do for their shareholders. GATA has helped tremendously to investigate, educate, and talk openly about the inner workings of the mysterious gold world. The combined efforts of the GATA Army played an influential role in the unwinding of the oppressive hedging agendas that the banking industry was foisting on our sector. To my knowledge, only 3 companies and their respective shareholders suffered the agony of hedge fund blow-ups. I believe our sector was on track for several more before the tide changed largely through GATA's efforts. This contribution to investors' well-being alone constitutes a huge public service act worthy of recognition. Bill and Chris. One day, in my opinion, probably long from now, support for GATA, particularly within the United States, I believe will be recalled as a very patriotic effort. In summary, I believe we must labor to expand and amplify the support behind GATA. 1, because the economics of our business demands it. 2, because the synergy from our combined efforts will prosper it. And 3, because the folks who pay our way deserve it. And now to quote some English community, something completely different. There's also a reason to support your local explorer. As you know, history is replete with tales of explorers making wealth-creating discoveries that have strongly affected the world of their day. The gold of Solomon fortified his kingdom. The silver of Potosi, Bolivia, empowered Spain. The silver of Chañarcillo was rumored to have helped finance Chile's victory in the War of the Pacific. And some say that the oil discovered in Texas may have helped facilitate the U.S. world hegemony that's so pervasive today. The SAMEX team works hard day in and day out to bring home the seeds of discovery that will grow and fortify its multitude of GATA-supporting shareholders with the capital necessary to hopefully change our world. Great mineral discoveries are rare and mysterious, so in honor of our visit here at Dawson City, let's take a moment to ponder the Klondike discovery. I'd like to paraphrase for you a portion of Pierre Berton's famous book, his account of the moments during and just after this famous event. Who found the nugget that started it all? The record is blurred. Years afterward, George Carmack insisted it was he who happened upon the protruding rim of bedrock from which he pulled a thumb-sized chunk of gold. But Skookum Jim and Tagus Charlie always claimed that Carmack was stretched out asleep under a birch tree when Jim, having shot a moose, was cleaning a dishpan in a creek and made the find. At any rate, the gold was there, lying thick between the flaky slabs of rock like cheese in a sandwich. A single panful yielded about $4. In a country where a 10-cent pan had always meant good prospects, this was an incredible find. Carmack flung down the pan and let out a war whoop. The 3 men began to perform a wild dance around it, a sort of combination Scottish hornpipe, Indian foxtrot, syncopated Irish jig after Bill, and a Siwash hula. They collapsed, panting, smoked a cigarette apiece, and panned out some more gravel until Carmack had gathered enough coarse gold to fill an empty Winchester shotgun shell. Then they settled down for the night. Carmack, staring at the dying flames, conjured up visions of wealth, a suitcase full of gilded securities, a trip around the world. The following morning, the trio staked claims on Rabbit Creek. They're going to be there this afternoon. Carmack blazed a small spruce tree with his axe and wrote with a pencil, "To whom it may concern, I do this day locate and claim by right of discovery 500 feet running upstream from this notice. Located the 17th day of 1896, G.W. Carmack." As Carmack made preparations to set off to record his claim, he continued to tell anyone he encountered about the gold on Rabbit Creek, including a man who, on hearing the tale, called him the biggest liar this out of hell. Late in the afternoon, he landed in the mining camp 40 Mile and went straight to Bill McPhee's saloon. It was crowded with men, a ragged, tattered group living almost from day to day in a settlement that had become a poor man's camp. Cormac was no drinking man, but on this occasion he felt the need for 2 whiskeys, and it was not until he had swallowed these that he was ready to break the news. After more than a decade, his moment had come, and he savored it. He turned his back to the bar and raised his hand. "Boys, I got some news to tell you. There's a big strike up the river." "Strike? Hell!" somebody shouted. "That ain't no news. That's just a scheme of Ledoux and Harper to start a stampede up the river." "Well, that's where you're off, you big rabbit-eating Malamute, Cormac cried. He pulled out his cartridge full of gold and poured it in the blower, upon which gold was weighed. "How does that look to you, eh?" A wave of suspicion swept the room. Nobody believed Lion George, the squaw man, had made a strike. Nevertheless, they crowded to the bar to examine the gold curiously. A seasoned prospector could tell from which creek a given amount of gold came simply by looking at it. And this gold was undeniably foreign. In texture, shape, and color, it was different from any gold that had been seen in the Yukon Valley before. The men in Bill McPhee's looked uneasily about them. All of them had been on stampedes before, and almost all these stampedes had led up false trails. And yet, one by one, on one excuse or another, they started to slip away. Silently in the twilight hours of that August night, the boat slid off. By morning, 40 Mile was a dead mining camp. Even the drunks had been dragged from the saloons by their friends and tied down protesting in the boats that were heading up for the Klondike. Cormac and Charlie went into the police post to record their claims. The recorder took one look at Lion George and laughed at him. Once again, Cormac produced his shell full of gold dust. The recorder stopped laughing. From that moment on, few men laughed or called him Lion George again. But up and down the Yukon Valley, the news spread like a great stage whisper. It moved as swiftly as the breeze in the birches, and more mysteriously. Men squatting by nameless creeks heard the tale, dropped their pans, and headed for the Klondike. Men seated by dying campfires heard it, started up in the night, shrugging off sleep to make tracks for the new strike. Some did not hear the news at all, but drifting past the Klondike mouth, they saw the boats and the tents, felt the hair raise on their napes, and then, still uncomprehending, still unbelieving, joined the clamoring throng pushing up through the weeds and muck of Rabbit Creek. Now to give you a modern-day taste of that same excitement, I invite you to watch a very short amateur, I stress amateur video, that I recently shot of what we believe is a new copper-gold moly discovery in Chile by Codelco. Codelco is the world's largest copper producer. They're a bureaucracy, so they don't make announcements about these kind of things. This discovery is significant, we believe, because it's outside the traditional world-famous copper belt and will most likely surprise the mining industry. The sounds you hear are of the drill rigs turning. Needless to say, the hair on the back of my neck stands up every time I review it, and I assure you, we're busy scoping out what quality tie-on ground is available for staking and or acquisition. Thank you very much for letting my thoughts.